Okay, Sherry, you can start whenever you're ready.
Okay, thanks. Hi everyone, my name is Sherry Gendell, Manager of Exhibition Services at RSNA. I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar today, How to Get Earned Media, where you will learn how to use your RSNA presence to encourage media attention. Today's webinar is being presented by our partner, Virtual Press Office, Cision PR Newswire's Trade Show Division. During this webinar, you will be able to send us questions through the chat, which we will answer at the end of this presentation. I also want to mention that we are recording today's webinar and we'll be posting it to our Exhibitor Best Practices page for anyone who may have missed the live broadcast or if you want to play it back for reference. Today we have Trina Louie and Ariane Muldoon joining us, both our Senior Customer Content Specialists with Cision. VPO Cision PR Newswire has been our partner for several years and is a leading provider of earned media software and services to public relations and marketing communications professionals. And now I'll hand it off to the VPO Cision team.
Thank you, Sherry. And thank you everyone for joining us. As Sherry mentioned, my name is Trina Louie, and I've been with Cision for 10 years helping clients perfect their event marketing strategies. Before my time at Cision, I also worked at a local newspaper and local TV stations in Cleveland and Toledo, Ohio. Since I worked in newsrooms, I'm very familiar with what journalists want and how they generate story ideas. Also joining me today is my colleague, Ariane Muldoon. She's been with Cision for 7 years, counseling clients on event-related content. We also both attended and exhibited at numerous trade shows. Cision as a company has been around under various names since 1867, but has evolved and acquired numerous companies over time. Now is a very exciting time since Cision has acquired all the necessary tools and implemented a way that companies can measure the business impact and trace monetary value back to their earned media campaigns, something the PR communications industry has been struggling with for decades. Today we are going to go over everything about earned media, what it is, how it fits into marketing, and how to create audience-centric content, ways to get earned media, how to pitch the media, and ways the earned media space is evolving. You can also use this information specifically for RSNA or all year round. So let's get started. So what is earned media? Earned media is any media activity related to a company or brand that is not directly generated by its company or its agents, but rather other entities such as customers or journalists. Earned media includes publicity gained through word of mouth, social sharing, reviews, news coverage, blogs, and various promotional efforts outside of paid media advertising or owned media branding. This is an example to demonstrate earned media. So every month, ADP distributes a release that breaks down findings of their National Employment Report. And depending on if the findings are notable, hundreds of articles come out about the report and thousands of people take to Twitter to share their thoughts. Some reactions to the report are good, some are bad, but ADP gets a big boost of attention, which is what most companies dream of. For the May Employment Report, articles about the findings were featured on CBS News, Bloomberg, CNBC, and multiple other publications that have a variety of audiences. Industry influencers also took to Twitter to provide their thoughts on the subject, providing even more exposure for ADP. So you might be thinking, why is earned media so important? How do these articles and mentions translate into what companies really care about? Sales. In a B2B setting, earned media helps a company make informed decisions about business purchases. In fact, 47% of buyers view 3 to 5 pieces of content before contacting a sales rep. And B2B prospects get 2/3 of the way through the buyer's journey before even reaching out to a vendor. Having content that users can find and view before RSNA will help those leads that visit your booth be that much further along in the buying process. Instead of having to start at the very beginning, who we are, what we do, etc., RSNA prospects can ask more specific questions about your product or service which will move them closer to a sale by the event's end. Earned media also helps with brand awareness and recognition. Take the ADP example. If you were just starting out as a startup company, what is the first company that would come to mind for your payroll needs? Would it be a company you've never heard of, or would it be the company featured in news articles that you've been reading and passing throughout the years? Another reason earned media is important is that it's more trustworthy. According to an Outsell Research independent study, audiences view earned media as the most authentic form of marketing, and up to 81% of marketers rate earned media as more effective or as effective as paid media like TV, radio, banner, and social ads. Finally, earned media allows you to reach desired personas. Often when companies are creating personas for content marketing owned strategy, many personas include what types of publication their target audience reads. If your target audience is reading certain publications, shouldn't you have the goal to be featured in those publications? With the amount of content that's produced every day, having a multi-channel approach, which is a mix of owned media, paid ads, and earned media, is the only way to ensure your content gets seen by as many people as possible, or gets seen by the same people at different points in their buyer journey. There are pros to each channel. However, using only one severely limits the discoverability of your brand, and you could be missing out on a whole pool of potential sales. Your customers' uses of media varies because of numerous factors such as age, professional background, education, place, and time. This means that your information can reach your target groups in totally different ways. Since a customer gets 2/3 of the way through the buyer journey before even reaching out to a vendor, and 9 out of 10 online buyers say content influences purchasing decisions, your prospects need to come across your company or brand multiple times in different ways in order to push them towards the sale. So for example, a prospect might come across an article featuring your company, and then they might go to your website, then they might go take a look at something online and see a paid ad for your company. Later, they might come across your blog post that your company wrote, which further convinces them to vet your solution and reach out. So here's an example of how earned media can play into a customer journey for a B2B medical device company. So let's say a medical device company, Acme Radiology, decides to distribute a new news release about a new product they will be unveiling at RSNA over a wire service that blasts the release to thousands of websites. Then while searching for newsworthy content, editors at healthimaging.com notice the release, decide to come up with a newsworthy story angle, write an article to appear on their website, which has 57,000 monthly visitors, of which a majority are Chief Director of Radiology and Hospital C-suite title holders. Then a Director of Radiology, while doing their morning browsing of industry news, comes across the healthimaging.com article that mentions Acme Radiology. The article piques interest, and the director wants to learn more about Acme Radiology, and starts to research their product, going to their website, reading reviews, and gathering all the specifications. After conducting their research, the director sees Acme will be at RSNA, adds their booth to their agenda, and then goes to speak with the representative at RSNA. After an in-depth, informative conversation and follow-up from Acme Radiology after the show, the director would then ideally make a purchase, love it, and recommend it to colleagues, all from one article mention. Yes, this is an ideal scenario, but believe it or not, it happens more often than you might think. And with new technology emerging in the earned media space, companies can start to track a reader from an earned media article to the point of sale, which has never been available before. We'll talk more about earned media space and how it's evolving later in the presentation, but first I'll turn it over to Ariane for what you've all been waiting for, specific actions you can take to drive earned media for your company.
Thank you, Trina. So we're going to kick off this part of the presentation by diving into the components of a content strategy, which helps support earned media. So we know that earned media is, by definition, created by sources other than the company itself. So can company-generated content really result in earned media? The answer, of course, is yes. However, there's usually a difference between the types of content that marketing teams are used to pumping out and the types of content that audiences actually want or that resonate with them. So that's why it's critical to evaluate your content strategy and ensure that it's being looked at through an audience lens. It's really tempting to devote resources to things like ebooks and white papers that can be touted on your website and used by the sales team, but those things aren't going to necessarily excite a journalist or the end customer. Paid advertisements have their place, of course, but as they've evolved, so have we. We're all really great at spotting any type of ad. Once we do, we immediately either tune out or become skeptical. Ads just come across as sort of buy me now, and that's not really reflective of the journey that the modern consumer is taking. So instead, try creating a content piece that truly speaks to your audience by solving their problems or appealing to their needs and desires. Put yourself in their shoes and ask, would I pay attention to this? Would I care? Would I want to share this? The point here is that earned media starts with great content. When you put out great content from the start, you also get the benefits of credibility, control, and creativity. So credibility is not only critical to attracting and retaining customers, but it's also a huge competitive advantage. When you consistently put out accurate, helpful information, you encourage both journalists and consumers alike to personally vouch for you, creating that coveted third-party trust. The idea of control might seem counterintuitive in the earned media space, because after all, you ultimately want other people to tell your story. The whole point is sort of for voices other than your own to shine. However, that doesn't mean that you can't help shape the narrative or be part of that dialogue. Think about the weather. We can't control it, but we can use tools to help anticipate, prepare for, and endure whatever comes at us. We know how to take advantage of those gorgeous days and how to withstand storms. So if you're not creating content for your audience and not engaging with them, you're essentially leaving them stranded. Without your guidance, people will be left to their own devices, speculating, using unreliable information, and then creating their own stories based off of that, which you don't want. Earned media's foundation is a relationship between a brand and various audience groups. So because of this, it naturally lends itself to collaboration and creativity. Making content for your audience forces you to think outside of the box and gives you a great opportunity to show off the human side of your brand. Tapping into emotional content, for example, is a really easy way to make something memorable. So we know that content is a very broad term that we say a lot in this presentation. So what are we really talking about when we use that term? Are there certain kinds of content that we're thinking of more than others? Hopefully this slide will help answer some of those questions. So here are a few examples of types of content that you can try using in your earned media strategy. Now, you don't have to do all of them at once or all of them at all, but I would encourage you to try one that you haven't before or one that you've immediately written off. So if you looked at this slide and instantly crossed off videos in your head, I would challenge you to think about why you did that and how you could possibly overcome some obstacles that you thought were insurmountable. So let's go over a few of these in more detail. So press releases may seem like relics of the past to you, but they're consistently reliable sources of information, and your communications plan probably already includes them in one form or another. Infographics lend themselves to sharing. They're a fun, efficient way to get across a lot of information to your audience, and they're super easy to chop up and repurpose. Journalists and other readers love them too. Videos are important as well. When someone is watching a video, they're having an engaged experience that keeps them captivated much longer than just text. This medium enables you to easily evoke emotion or make a complex service look effortless. Studies and other original research may not seem like they would excite your audience, but data is very enticing to journalists in particular. They can easily turn your numbers and analysis into a story that your end customer will find fascinating, even if the raw data wouldn't necessarily have appealed to them. Interactive content is a neat way to take complex or abstract information and make it captivating. If you can personalize it, even better. Who doesn't enjoy taking quizzes about themselves or playing around with an interactive website? Finally, blog posts give you a good medium to convey thought leadership, show off the human side of your brand, and spotlight any corporate social responsibility endeavors that the company may be involved in. So by no means is this an exhaustive list of the kind of content you can create, but it will hopefully get you brainstorming about some new things to try with your audience in mind. We mentioned press releases on the last slide, but I want to take a closer look at them to explore some misconceptions about them and how you can use them in your earned media efforts. So even though I just mentioned that press releases are reliable pillars of most communication strategies, you might still be staring at this slide and thinking to yourself, I don't know. I've seen articles where journalists say they've never used a press release for a story idea. And I'm here to tell you that, yes, that is true. You are right. A lot of journalists don't find their story ideas from just sifting through press releases. Some do, but the majority don't. So is the graph that we have here totally bogus? No. Let me explain. Journalists might not use press releases for story ideas, but I think you would be hard-pressed to find a journalist who never reads them. So if they're not using them for ideas, why do they bother? It's because press releases are accurate, newsworthy, and trustworthy sources of brand information. When considering several channels of company communications, from a spokesperson to the website to social media, journalists consistently rank the press release as the most trustworthy. Press releases also top their list of most requested content. Yes, they want studies and images and videos too, but they want to be able to source clean corporate announcements for quotes and text. So yes, journalists actually like press releases. They just expect you to send them press releases in a personalized pitch or for them to be available when they're researching your company. Sending a press release out is a huge help in your overall communications plan, but it's not going to do the whole job for you. Okay, so just because journalists want press releases, that doesn't mean that they want all of them. Fortunately, there are some easy ways to make your press release more effective, either by getting better at the great things you're already doing or by tweaking your approach a little bit. So the biggest part of a press release is the newsworthy hook. Sometimes it can be tempting to write a vague headline about a new product launch or start the release body with the story of your company. But you actually want to do the opposite. You want to clearly state the news up front in the headline and quickly expand upon it in the first line and first paragraph. If you wait until the second or third paragraph to get to the news, you've already lost most of your readers. And if you're writing a headline that you hope will sort of trick your readers into clicking on it, please just scratch that out and start over, because no one likes clickbait. The press release itself should also be written in natural language and avoid buzzwords. So while most brands have, style guidelines and set keywords that they like to include in all communications, try to keep the jargon to a minimum if you can. When you're immersed in an industry and you're reading similar publications over and over, you know that the language can get stale sometimes. Your audience feels the same way. Freshen up your language and make things easy to understand for humans, and people will pay attention that much more. All press releases should incorporate at least one quote as well, if at all possible. So think about the kinds of articles and stories that you read. Most of them have quotes, right? Yes, a journalist can reach out to you for quotes, and even if you provide some, they might still contact you for different ones. But providing at least one up front makes their job a lot easier and gives your story some pizzazz. Finally, journalists want more multimedia like images and videos. Some publications actually can't or just won't run original stories without at least one multimedia element. So even if you don't want to embed a photo or a video within the release itself, including a link to more assets or indicating that multimedia is available upon request would be perfect. We'd recommend going with a link because it gives the journalist options to work with right away. There are a lot of things to keep in mind when putting together a release. We know that journalists want them, but here are a few more tips to help craft a successful announcement. So we've established that the news angle is important, but this is actually where a lot of brands get stuck, so we wanted to take a moment to talk about it. So some aren't sure if they have news at all. Others have so many announcements that they don't know where to start. and a few might be stuck somewhere in between or actually pick the wrong angle. So think about what overall story you're trying to tell. If you don't have any new products, or you're going to an event like RSNA but feel like you need something else to say in addition to that, consider commenting on trends or other timely occurrences. For example, during hurricane season, we see a lot of press releases offering actionable tips and advice for how to prepare for a storm and what to do if you're impacted. Next is the call to action, which is actually missing from more press releases than you might guess. A call to action is just something like a link that guides your reader to what you want them to do next after they're done, reading your release. So good examples of this would be a link to register for something, or to sign up for a newsletter, or to go to a specific website page. So supplemental information. It's easy for press releases to become dry, boring, long walls of text. Incorporating supporting details like quotes or other links and multimedia assets are easy ways to liven them up and make them that much more useful to journalists. You also want to pay attention to formatting, because a lot of people don't. It's something that's really easy to skip over. So taking a few minutes to break things up with bold section headers or a bulleted list can actually do wonders for the readability of a release. Remember, most people just skim releases, so try to help the major points stand out for them. Finally, don't forget about what can seem like small details. So again, if you're exhibiting at a show like RSNA, there's no reason not to include your booth number. Always be sure to include personal contact information as well. You want to make it easy for people to find you. So now that you have great content, where do you go from here? We'll look at different ways to share your content and establish a brand presence to connect with your audience and hopefully get some earned media along the way. So we know that your audience wants good content and that press releases are a big part of an earned media strategy. But what else can you do? There's no magic button to instantly give you coverage, but there are a few tactics that can certainly help encourage it. The most important thing to remember is that all of this starts with stellar content worth sharing and then branches out from there. So one way to encourage earned media is through social media, but I'm not talking about paid ads on Twitter or Facebook. That wouldn't count. Social media gives you a unique opportunity to engage and connect with your audience, so take advantage of it. People absolutely love when brands either like, respond to, or otherwise engage with their posts. Influencer partnerships provide an authentic avenue to reach your audiences as well. So look into teaming up with an industry titan to reach new people and get them chatting with unique content. As we went over earlier, press releases are great earned media tools. You can get broad exposure with them through a wire service and keep them on your website in a news archive. But they also do really great work in personalized pitches. So the type of editorial coverage that comes to mind when you think of earned media often starts with a solid pitch. We'll be going over pitching in depth in just a few minutes. Blogging gives you the opportunity to showcase thought leadership and other content that you wouldn't necessarily find in a press release, but that doesn't mean it's not worth covering by journalists. The blogging format is naturally more informal and audience-centric anyway, so give them content that's worth talking about. Finally, don't underestimate industry events. So sometimes the tendency is to view events as entirely separate from a brand's overall communication strategy, and many times the event team can be siloed off from other parts of the business. So we know it's easy to have those blinders on and assume that the only people who care about your brand at a show are the attendees, but that's really not true. Events are naturally newsworthy, and they offer a great springboard for your brand and content, so take advantage of them in any way that you can. Fortunately, RSNA is a great show to tie your brand to, and the organization offers a ton of resources that we'll go into next. So RSNA consistently gets good media coverage, both in local Chicago outlets as well as outlets that have national and international reach. People are going to pay attention to the show. So anytime you talk about it in press releases or on social media, you're giving your communications that much more discoverability. RSNA also gives you a lot of great resources to use in your overall paid, owned, and earned strategy. So I wanted to quickly highlight a few here. Educational webinars like this one help you get the most out of your show experience. Many of them give you information and tips that you can use all year round too. You also have the opportunity to create show-centric online press kits through our partnership with the show. As a show participant, you also get access to marketing and exhibitor checklists, which you can use as guidelines for your event strategy. There's a plethora of other tools and opportunities that RSNA offers, including best practices, so we'd encourage you to take a look at everything that they've provided to you. So now we'll get into the section that's all about pitching. All right, so let's start with how to find people to pitch. It can be tempting to take shortcuts during this process because it is time-consuming, but putting in extra time is definitely worth the investment. The good news is that you don't have to be alone in the pitching process. There are a lot of great resources out there to help you. When you're looking for someone to pitch, an easy place to start is the media list provided to you by the show, as well as any house list that you may have. You know these contacts have been vetted and are high quality, so it usually doesn't take too much wrestling to segment them down further and find some individuals that fit the niche that you're after. To expand outside of your normal circles, you can consider services like HARO or ProfNet. If you or your client want to be a source or expert for a story or topic, you can sign up and then receive relevant inquiries from the media. Some services also include the ability for you to send out pitches via the platform. Pay attention to the general earned media landscape for your industry too, like reporters that might be covering competitors. If you want to be more proactive, researching a database might be for you. Now, this is definitely not to be confused with those spammy emails that you probably get sometimes, asking if you want to buy an industry list. Those are pretty much never legitimate. With a professional database service, however, you can access reliable, up-to-date information and can easily search for journalists and influencers that fit your topic and industry. Some of them even include pitching profiles with quick links to the person's social media, a bio, what outlets they work for, and full contact details. So social media is another place that we'd recommend using for your research. We don't suggest sending your actual pitch over Twitter, unless, of course, that journalist specifically takes requests like that, but it's perfectly fine to use social media for research. Delve into hashtags or follow along with event-related conversations, and you might be surprised to find new influencers to interact with. We read a lot of event-related tweets, and I've seen both on-site and remote reporters asking for information or looking for specific types of companies to go meet with. It can be hit or miss, but I definitely wouldn't overlook it. You can also do some good old-fashioned Googling. So it might take more digging and time, but it still gets the job done. The takeaway here is that there are many pitching tools at your disposal. So when getting ready to send your pitch, there are a few best practices to keep in mind. Don't spam. So think about the kinds of, unsolicited calls and emails that you get, both at work and at home. It's really easy to tell a salesy or spammy email from a legitimate one, right? Journalists can spot a mass email or an irrelevant pitch a mile away. Also, don't be generic. You want to tailor your pitch to both the outlet and the individual that you're contacting. Being super vague and not including any specifics makes it just really easy to hit delete. So when you're applying for a job, you should tweak your resume for that particular position, research the hiring manager for your cover letter too. It's the same principle here. Consider including some multimedia. So while we don't suggest adding attachments to your email because that can increase the likelihood of it ending up in the junk folder or just not being received at all, we do recommend including some indication that photos and videos or whatever you have are available. You can do this with a link to a press kit or Dropbox, or just let them know that you have this stuff ready to go. Many journalists need a visual element in their original stories, and they'll dig for one if need be, but offering it up front just makes their job that much easier. You also want to consider editorial cycles and other events. If the person you're pitching always does a big annual feature or writes about certain topics at certain times of the year, keep that in mind. If you don't know, that's something that you'll want to put in a little bit more research and to find out. So do your homework and just properly prepare for that pitch. Research the outlet thoroughly to determine what kinds of things they focus on, and read the individual journalist's last 3 to 5 stories or so to get a feel for their work and make sure that your content is a good fit. Finally, be conversational and concise. You don't want to be overly personal, but simply speaking as a human to another human goes a long way. Buzzwords and jargon are a huge turnoff, so just focus on thoughtfully articulating your pitch in a succinct way. So I just gave you some general best practices for pitching, but don't take it from me. The information you see here is from Cision's State of the Media report and highlights what journalists want from you. The number one thing they ask for, you to research and understand their outlet. If you look at this list of top 5 requests, all of them relate back to helping the journalist do their job quicker and easier. They want to work with you, and they expect you to be an asset, so keep that in mind when pitching. Finally, I wanted to go over an example of a pitch. There really is no perfect pitch, but there are helpful guidelines and templates that you can find online. The screenshot here is an example that I took from the first link down in the resources section, so this is the type of pitch that that person would like to receive. Looking over it quickly, however, are there any edits you would make, or is there anything in particular that jumps out at you? Try and read it from the perspective of a journalist rather than someone doing the pitching. So when I look at this, I like that the person is upfront about who they are and what their news is. They also include specifics, provide multimedia, and differentiate themselves from competitors. They also add a timely factor by mentioning that the launch is next week. However, they don't demonstrate a knowledge of the journalist's previous work or any familiarity with the publication, and there's no mention of how the product would benefit the readers. Even though there's a video link included, there were images attached to the email, which we wouldn't recommend, as we mentioned earlier. Lastly, there's a line about first refusal. So I would personally be judicious with any potential exclusivity or first refusal offers. While no one wants to write a story that's already been written, you can get into dicey territory with the rules of media exclusives. First refusal also signals that you may have contacted other publications that turned you down and that you just want coverage. It sort of just takes away from the personalization of the pitch. Remember, each journalist is going to have individual quirks and preferences, but the basics are fairly uniform across the board. I've included a few links at the bottom here to some other helpful pitching resources from a variety of sites. So if you haven't done much pitching before or want to reevaluate your strategy, these are good places to start. Now I'm going to turn things back over to Trina.
Okay, so before we leave you, we wanted to share some exciting things going on in the earned media space. We've gone through why earned media is important and how to get earned media, but let's face it, PR professionals have always had an issue with measuring the value of all this effort. According to a 2018 Cision PR Week survey, 77% of communications professionals feel that they could better measure the ROI of their work. And now, with new technologies offered in this space, they can. PR professionals have historically struggled with proving the ROI of their efforts. They'd send out a release, receive the number of impressions, which is just how many people potentially saw the release, and perhaps see some articles come out. Then metrics evolved where PR pros could see the actual number of who read the release and have monitoring to gather the articles that came as a result of the release, but they didn't know who the readers of the press release or articles were or anything about them. PR pros were left standing in a blur of information asking, why is this information of use? How can we attribute monetary value to these readers? Now that's changed. With ID tagging technology similar to what marketers have been using for years, by the way, PR professionals can get demographic and firmographic data of who is looking at their news releases and articles written as a result of their releases from a third party like healthimaging.com. This ID tagging technology tracks the consumer of content and can provide data like company size, company revenue, industry, and more. Not only that, but PR professionals can now also track that audience down from a press release or earned media article to their company website and point of sale, meaning communications professionals can now assign value and ROI to their earned media and public relations efforts. Imagine what having this type of data can do to a communications budget. And ways to use this new data are constantly evolving. For example, a theme park company used this technology to identify a new audience to target and then executed paid advertisements to this audience that read their theme park content. So instead of using a lookalike audience that traditional marketing uses to send paid advertisements to, they instead pulled the IDs of anyone that read articles specific to their theme park and displayed paid ads to this new audience. And they saw tremendous success. This new audience had a 34% higher click-through rate than what their lookalike audience was in their traditional paid advertisement method. And this more engaged audience came at a lower cost per click. Having access to this new data completely changed the theme park's methodology. They dropped their lookalike strategy for traditional paid advertising and rebudgeted to invest further in earned media paid ad targeting. Now you might be thinking, I know who my target audience is and how to reach them. I don't need this. But I ask, how open-minded would you be about reviewing your strategy? By limiting who you think your audience is, you are limiting your potential. Many products started out with one intention and completely transformed from its original use. Texting started out as a means of cell phone companies to communicate outages to their customers. But their customers enjoyed it so much, they started to use the functionality to communicate with friends and their other contacts. You never know what audiences may see your product or service, and think of a way to use it that your company never would have, opening up a whole new market and revenue stream for your business. Just imagine the impact this could have. So before you continue with the same strategy, we encourage you to think about how earned media can grow your business, which will help your company and push you towards that next promotion. Okay, so we have some resources we've compiled here for your reference. The first link will take you directly to the online press office that we run for the show. We also have some handy links to informative videos and blog posts that go into more detail on a few topics we mentioned today. We hope you find them useful. Sorry about that. And we want to thank everyone for joining us before we take questions. We do hope you learned a few things along the way. As Sherry mentioned, we will be providing a recording of this webinar as well, so you can watch any parts you may have missed or share it with a colleague. If you have any questions or want to connect with our team, we have our phone number and email address listed here. You can reach both Ariane and me at vpo@cision.com. We also recommend whitelisting our domain and adding our email address to your address book if you want to be sure that you'll receive upcoming communications from us. We'll usually send out a few emails before RSNA offering tips and discounted services for the show, so keep an eye out. And now we'll take a few moments to answer some questions. Feel free to chat any questions that you have in the chat box and we'll answer them now. We will start with some questions that came in during the presentation.
Okay, so it looks like the first one here is, when should I start creating and sending out content related to RSNA? Okay, so this is a good question. In general, we recommend sort of staggering content in the months, weeks, and days leading up to the show. That just helps. So, you know, if you have a lot of content and you're putting it out all at once, you're sort of limiting who's going to take a look at it. You're just sort of hoping that that one time is when everyone's paying attention. So when you stagger it out, that just really helps exponentially increase your visibility. But specific timing will depend on your goals. So if you want to, drive traffic to your booth at RSNA, your strategy with that might look a little bit different than if you want to drive traffic to your website. As another general rule, you'll just want to keep in mind any holidays, travel time, that sort of thing. As a general best practice, we typically, don't recommend sending out news on Friday afternoons, because a lot of times, journalists are done for the week, people are done for the day, or they're traveling. And of course, we really don't recommend putting things out on Thanksgiving, because people are, usually with their families and not really paying attention. But we are happy to give you a personal consultation based on your needs and content, so you can always feel free to contact us at the email on the screen. We'd be happy to take a look at what you have and give you some personal advice on that. Okay, so we also got a question about embargoed press releases, like if they're helpful to journalists. So on this one, the short answer is no. Embargoed press releases, they're sort of thought of as a generally outdated tactic, I would say, and many journalists don't actually honor them. So a good rule of thumb is to only send your news out when you're ready for people to know about it and report on it, because there's no guarantee that they will keep it a secret.
Okay, just waiting here for any other questions. I'm not seeing any other come in. So Sherry, if you wanted to take it over.
Sure. Yeah, thanks Trina and Ariane for providing this educational webinar today for all of our exhibitors and answering the questions that came in. I'm hoping we can share a PDF of the slides as well so that you can have access to the links. So I will work with Trina and Ariane on getting that on our website as well as the recording. If you enjoyed today's session, please watch for the invitation for another session with Trina and Ariane next month, when they will share information on how you can promote your RSNA exhibit, and they will offer tools and strategies for event marketing and media relations. Also mark your calendars for October 2nd, that's 2 weeks from today, when we will have a special Q&A webinar with Robin Davis on how to create more engaging in-booth demos and presentations for your audience at RSNA 2019. That is a webinar you will want to be sure to join in live, because you will be able to submit your specific questions for Robin to answer as part of the session. So until next time, we'll see you then, and we'll definitely see you, most of you, on site. Bye, everyone.